No, I won't back down. You can stand me up at the gates of hell, but I won't back down. Gonna stand my ground, won't be turned around. In a world that keeps on dragging me down, gonna stand my ground, and I won't back down. I won't back. Hey, hey, baby, there ain't no easy way out. I won't back. Hey, hey, I stand my ground,
Yeah.
and I won't back down.
And welcome to I Protest. This is Donald Jeffries here with you. Sorry we're a little bit late. Having the typical glitches I've been having lately. So you can hear some ranting about me or having to try to get guests on the show for you. But we had someone lined up, and I'm not sure what's happening. But maybe he will still come in. Former Oklahoma State Representative Charles Keyes done some great work on the Oklahoma City bombing. Interviewed him on my TFR version of I Protest a couple years ago. So not sure what's happening, but we had him lined up a couple weeks ago too, and the same kind of thing happened. So maybe he'll show up, maybe not. If not, I'll be talking, and of course Tony Arterburn will jump in. Okay, and I'm seeing some comments now. Hi, Chris Buchan. Thanks for being here. You're a bit late. Yeah, exactly. I am, and it's just any of you out there. If anybody wants to volunteer to be as if it's not already enough to have the researchers, the unpaid researchers, and Tony Arterburn doing everything he does for me. Anybody wants to volunteer to be a guest, a special assistant in charge of procuring guests, we can come up with some fancy title for you or whatever. Because what happens is you end up losing your enthusiasm for this because this happens way too much, and especially at the last minute, because it's not like I can suddenly get another guest at the last minute when you're ready to go on air, and especially when you send reminders out and say the day before or that morning, and I do this all the time. And I understand it's difficult. People are busy and everything, but it's very frustrating. But it's nice to see some comments there in YouTube. I see Doug Walters. Hey, Don, love your work. Thank you, Doug. Appreciate that. And Chris Buchan, Chris says, let me work on my scheduling issues, and I'd love that. Well, great. Hey, you know what? Anybody, and if more than one of you want to do it, share it. Then it'll make it look like I have a great big staff. A lot of these things are, are impressions. You work and say, I'm publicist, I'm whatever that. People think, you have people, because some of the people that I contact, have people. I don't have people other than you guys that I hopefully I credit you a lot, but. Anyhow, my main man Tony Arterburn's here. So, Tony, where's I would have written a Substack article. Maybe we could discuss, but I didn't get a chance to because my main writing computer died on me today too. I have a home network set up, but I have the computers for different things. Again, these are first world problems, So I'll probably have to get another computer. I realize every time I do that, my son always reminds me, it's another first world problem. I said, yes, I know it really is. But
Well, what I've learned through knowing you is that you and I can talk about anything. We can be 5 minutes out from a live stream or 2 minutes out and say, hey, we're going to talk about what do you think, and then just go live, and we can cover a lot of ground. We did that this past week on David Knight's show twice, so once for 2 hours.
That's right. Oh, man, that was wonderful. Chris Graves says, and of course we knew he'd be here. Wonderful to see Chris Graves, one of the legendary researchers. He says that Rockfin isn't live yet. Is that not true?
That is not true at this time. Have Chris check again.
Check again.
Rockfin sometimes has a little bit of a lag on the stream.
Okay.
Just a tiny lag, so it should be good now.
Cool. But so anyhow, that's where. So I'm a little out of sorts today, because I'm a creature of habit. So I have a routine. I have an office downstairs, and I have this laptop I just used for interviews. I have this for that. I really don't do much else on it. I don't like laptops. I don't. I'm one of the few people that still loves the old desktop computers. I like that. I like the big keyboard. I like having a big monitor. I like it all separate. I don't. I use laptops, but I don't. I don't. I don't like them as much. As usual, I'm kind of disagreeing with
Looks
most.
like we've got Charles in the back office now, Don. I mean, looks like he's
Oh,
arranged the camera.
okay, great.
So it looks like
Okay,
he's
that's wonderful.
walking around. So as soon as he stabilizes a little bit, I'll put
Okay,
him into the stream.
okay, that's cool. Oh, that's cool. Well,
I
that's
just
nice to know.
And I'm with you on desktops. I really prefer my desktop. I've got
Mhm.
it's not a real modern setup, but I've got dual screens here, and I bought one
Oh
of those
yeah.
refurbished computers back in 2018 from Walmart where they like
Mhm.
refurbish them, and it works
Yeah.
just fine. So knock on wood, it still works, my friend.
I like them much better. I spent a lot of time, back when I was in IT, especially in the old days when before security got too big. We ended up getting a lot of unwanted parts and putting computers together. Putting memory and hard drive. And it was that's pretty much every computer I ever had. Was built from there. So I recognized maybe they wouldn't last that long, but it was pretty cool. Is
Let me
Charles? I
see.
see Charles. Is Charles
Yeah, I
there?
think he may have stabilized and set down. Let me
There he
see if
is.
we
He
can
looks
add him
like
and see
okay.
how this goes.
How's that?
Okay.
Hey, Charles, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. Well, you're on with Don Jeffries, sir.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Sorry I was
Oh,
late.
well, I'm better late than never. I'm glad you're here, Charles. You're worth waiting for. Former Oklahoma State Representative Charles Key, and I've been trying to. I'm writing Hidden History 3, so I'm covering Oklahoma City bombing in more depth there, along with a lot of other subjects. But uh, you're about the only one that's still out there kicking around and willing to talk about this. So, what's is the state of your work? Are you still involved in trying to expose the truth about Oklahoma City bombing all these years later?
Well, I think the answer would be no to that. Basically, I don't know anybody that really is. I mean, unless one wants to consider it, I'm doing this interview and people like Chris Emery and a few others are out there still, open and discussing it and receiving information, the very limited amount that continues to come out from time to time. So, I mean, it's kind of a yes and no answer. We haven't separated ourselves from it, but we're not really looking for anything. But I will say this, Donald, I'd like to hear what you guys think about this. In the early days, when it first happened, and there was a lot of interviews, a lot of TV interviews, as everyone knows. And I did so many, I forget exactly when this was, but it was in the earlier part. So I get court TV call, and they say, "Can you go down to Oklahoma University? They've got a place down there where different places where they'll have a studio." They said there's going to be a guy, somebody from Bob Macy's office, which was the district attorney that was handling the case for Oklahoma. I went down there. This was an assistant. He didn't want to be there. He didn't have anything to offer. We sat next to each other, two chairs, cameras asking us questions. And I'm not knocking him in any way. He's a great guy. He just didn't have, he didn't really want to be there. The other guy didn't want to be there, so he sent him. So we talk, blah, blah, blah. I got the sense that I really kind of got his attention by saying some things very directly like I did and always do. And then after it was over, he and I stood off to the side and talked. And he said this to me, and this is my point in bringing this up. He said, well, he goes, I don't know if you know who really runs this from the federal level. And I said, well, I've heard things, but yeah, I'd like to know what you know. He said, well, I've been on some meetings. There's a meeting that occurs once a week, usually on Mondays, and sometimes there's more than one of these conference calls. And it's with the Department of Justice, and it's Merrick Garland, Jamie Gorlick, and Abner Mikva, who is running the thing for the Clinton administration, or controlling, running, making all the decisions. And there'll be somebody from the governor's office, the fire department, and the DA's office on there all the time. Well, I was just thinking, I wonder if anybody cares to know that in the current context that we've got this administration with Merrick Garland, the head of the Justice.
Mm-hmm. That is, he goes back that far. And I guess when we look at what's happening today, and you is obviously you feel probably the same way that I do about it. I mean, this is kind of a culmination. Somebody in the chat room talked about seeing the documentary A Noble Lie. And there's so many lies that have happened, certainly since before Oklahoma City, but since Oklahoma City. So how do you feel as somebody who's who's been around a while and served in the state house years ago, to where we've arrived at this kind of a disastrous condition where I don't about you, but I don't think America has ever been anywhere near the sorry condition that it's in today. I mean, what are your thoughts on these kinds of lies, these cover-ups that continued, and eventually it resulted in this systemic corruption and just the mess that we're in today?
It's really hard not to get super cynical, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is. I agree with you. I think it's probably worse than I've ever seen or our country's ever experienced. Although there's been, sometimes people will say, well, but back that know history, they'll bring something up that you didn't know about, and that's pretty interesting stuff. But still, yet,
yeah,
I think it's the worst. And personally, I don't have any other way to put it in context except that we move away from the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the big. It's a complicated answer, whatever the answer is, but that's a big element in the answer to where we are, why where we're at today. And so we're, like Jefferson said, let no more be heard of confidence in man, but bind him down with the chain of the Constitution. Right. And as long as we've been able to do that, we've been in good shape. But as we've fallen away from that, what we've got is government by men, not by law. And that's basically the problem in my way. That would be the closest way to trying to answer the question and then find a solution for it, because other than that, planet Earth is just a screwed up place.
It definitely is. But long before we got this screwed up, you were there in the 1990s, and so talk about first of all, how you became interested. I don't know if you were a state representative at the time of the Oklahoma City bombing or not, or how you got interested in this, and you became one of the key figures along with Hoppy Heidelberg later, and Glenn Wilburn, people like that were, I guess, J.D. Cash, people like that, of course. David Hoffman. By the way, do you have any contact information for David Hoffman, the guy that wrote, I think, still the best book?
He passed away quite a long time ago.
Oh gosh,
what? It was over in Europe. I think it was Poland, or
really
maybe Czechoslovakia. And it's a little sketchy about just why he died, but I think he was taken into custody into a local jail or something, and he died there.
Oh gosh, because he wasn't that old, was he?
No, not at all.
Okay, well, that's interesting. I can
Janie Coverdale,
mm-hmm.
grandmother that had two grandsons that died she just passed away about 3 weeks ago, maybe a month or so back.
Okay, that's different than, because I've been communicating with Edie Smith, trying to communicate with Edie Smith, former Edie Smith, and then Kathy Sanders, who I guess is Glenn Wilburn's ex-wife, and the mother the mother of Edie Smith, the grandmother of those babies that died. And she's working. She couldn't talk too much because she said she's working on a documentary and had signed a agreement or something not to discuss things. What did you talk much to them, or who did you work with mostly when you were trying to find out the truth about the Oklahoma City bombing?
Well, back then, okay, so I'll just kind of give a quick start from the beginning. I first ran in '84 and lost. I ran in '86 and won and served for 12 years to '98. And the reason I was defeated in '98 because the powers that be came after me. Mm-hmm. And that's a interesting story, a real interesting story right there, just that campaign and how all that developed. But I worked with Glenn Wilburn very closely, and then John Cash, J.D. Cash, fairly close with what's her name, Jana Davis, the TV reporter.
Yes.
She was a real, me person, just all about
mm-hmm.
her and getting her information. She didn't want to share anything. She wanted everybody to give her everything. And I think she thought she was going to win whatever the equivalent television award was for breaking the open or something. But
right.
I think some other people had different opinion about that. But so I was working with them, and that was pretty much it. There was a lot of other people that came in and were doing different things, a lot of other people. But those were the main ones I worked with for several years.
Are Janet Davis and JD Cash, are they still around? What are they doing now?
JD died several years ago.
Okay.
There were questions about whether or not he was truly an independent investigator journalist or if he was connected to the other side, whoever that.
Yeah, boy, that's everywhere, isn't it? You never know who's working for who. It's spy versus spy.
But I think you'll find this interesting if you didn't know this. There's kind of two sides, and not everybody's picking one side or the other. But on the subject of was it domestic or was it Middle Eastern, there seems to be, and JD and Jaina were real, boy, they were hardcore on this. Jaina was said it's all a Middle Eastern thing primarily or totally.
Mm-hmm.
That's BS. He'd get soupy, go hostile about this. No, it's just domestic. And they both had strong opinions about that, and they badmouthed each other and sometimes other people if they took a different position. And that's why JD was questioned, because it was like, thou doth protesteth too much. Why are you so certain when nobody really knows? If you got the smoking gun, you show it to us. So you know how these things go. It's kind of like that. You never know for sure, but that's kind of where people divided. It was either Middle Eastern or not.
Is Janet Davis still around?
Well, I don't know where she is. I seem like I ran into, who was it? Oh, COVID's changed our perspective on time, but probably 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And she's kind of walked away from all of that stuff a long time ago. So,
well, I want to. What do you know about? And I want to go over some of the doubts with you before I forget. Because I'm deep diving into these issues. And this is my third volume of Hidden History. So the people that have read the other two, they presumably have some kind of grasp of the basic facts. I'm looking to try to find more about Mike Loudenslager and Danielle Hunt, and I'm sure you probably know both of those names. What, if anything, do you know about either of those? Information is very hard to find. I think they're both really important.
Well, Danielle Hunt, they are not responding. They would not respond. They were very afraid.
Yeah.
And they talked to some people, including myself, briefly in the very, very, very early days.
Mm-hmm.
And Daniel Hunt's husband and she supposedly knew some really dynamic information, because one of those things, as you may remember, this may be why you're asking, it's because allegedly McVeigh and somebody else came up there in the couple of days before. That's one thing. And then the other part of it is what was communicated to she and her husband from federal officials, if anything. And there were supposedly things that were said. And he said some things to another investigator that I trust explicitly, but I didn't hear him say this. But it was something like there was information from, it was either GSA or someone else that was pretty suspect and pretty telling. But he got real, and I've heard now that, and this is just hearing from another person that heard this, but I still think it's true and accurate. One of them has either passed away or something like
that. The husband died a few years ago. He died. But just for those of you, this is really inside baseball, I know. But Danielle Hunt was the operator of the daycare center inside the Murrah building that blew up, was bombed, and she resigned, or I don't think she was fired, but she quit her job very shortly, right before the Oklahoma City bombing. And supposedly this Timothy McVeigh, and those of you familiar with the JFK assassination, we know about the Oswald imposters, people that were running around or that apparently impersonating him right before the assassination. I don't know if there were McVeigh imposters, but McVeigh, or somebody reporting to me McVeigh, was making appearances, and one of those appearances was a memorable one at the Murrah building, where he just kind of was talking about the daycare center, and we acted odd enough for them to remember. And her husband was the head of security, I think, in the building, and I believe he was fired right before. It was the same. Anyway, they both lost their jobs right before, and that's why and he's dead. But I would love to talk to her, but I guess you're saying she's not interested.
Well, and I don't know if you read the reports. I don't know if you remember this, because stuff time passed by, but there was another encounter just like that by the who was that guy? Department of Veterans Affairs, Paul Hilton. His last name will come to me. It's in the report. But he was He said they would have veterans come in there, of course, asking for help or other information that would help them. He said, again, it was about 10 days before the bombing, maybe 2 weeks. McVeigh and two other guys come in. And he said in that office, they didn't have a secretary up front, but they had a little ding bell on a desk. And so he hears that bell ding. He walks out front, it's McVeigh, two other guys, one guy sitting down, other guy standing up, McVeigh standing up. Conversations with McVeigh, and McVeigh, he introduces himself. He goes, I'm Paul, blah, blah, whatever his last name was. He goes, I'm Tim McVeigh. And he says, oh, Tim McVeigh. Are you related to the McVeighs down in some town in South?
Oh, yes. Yeah, yeah.
And he goes, how do they spell their name or something? He spelled it differently. And he goes, oh, no, remember, doctor, that my name is spelled McVey, which was kind of an unusual way to respond, at least I think.
Mm-hmm.
Further had this conversation, and then they left.
Yeah, I do recall that. And so somebody or McVeigh or somebody else was trying to put that name out there right before. But it's amazing. So what about Loudenslager? I hear the story of this guy. This guy supposedly saved a bunch. There's witness testimony that he was kind of a heroic figure after the blast, and he was involved. And officially, they would claim that he died at his desk.
It's a really hard one.
Yeah.
Because we tried, and a bunch of people. We worked with lots of people trying to get some kind of facts related to that. We know the stories. The stories are like what you just said. Plus, he was found at his desk, slumped over, dead. And, did he kill himself or did he die in the bombing? It seemed like a issue. So it's one of those I've had to put over in a category that I don't think we're ever going to find out, and we're not going to know because there's not any hard evidence that we can put out in front of people's faces and say, look at this,
Yeah. And I try to contact people. And again, I have people, Chris Graves in the chat room, and Bob Wilton and Peter Teakoch, and feed me, get me these contact information. And Loudenslager is kind of an uncommon name. And we found several of them out there, phone numbers for them, but I can't get through. 90+% of these people that are connected to these events, when you call their numbers, I found the numbers are disconnected. I don't think that's a coincidence. I don't think an average random group of people that the vast majority of the listed numbers are going to be disconnected. People don't want to talk. So I'm sure you probably did. At what point did you just finally realize you got tired of beating your head against the wall and realize that people aren't going to talk? People are scared. People have died. Did you just kind of say, I don't want to be on a body count list too? Or?
No, actually we didn't. The opposite. We actually talked to, when you look at that 555-page report, we talked and properly, professionally interviewed and recorded the interviews of a lot of people. And so, I'm glad you asked me that, because not only did we talk to a lot of people, and we've got those affidavits in both written and audio and video form, that's just as good a quality that you'd go to a court. I mean, they should have sued me for that big report we put out. No one tried to do anything legally on that. Now, why is that? Because they can't. And they don't want to get it out there exposed and publicize it. But they because it's people's affidavits, it's factual information. So, there's a lot of that stuff. But there were so many people we talked to that wouldn't give us a affidavit. And I remember I was just talking to somebody the other day about this, how many, there's probably a half a dozen or so that I would describe them like this. They were so scared, even talking to us. They didn't come to us. We had to go seek them out and go to them and make it hard for them to turn us down. And I remember one lady in a southern small Oklahoma City, we went and hunted her down. She was shaking visibly like a leaf. She was so scared these people are scared that they are going to come and get them. Somebody's going to come and get them and kill them or something like that.
Yeah. So, do you remember that witness's name, or you don't want to give it?
I don't remember that name, and I forget. I'd have to think real hard to remember the story that she was part of. Mm-hmm. But it might have been that one might have been related to, the night before the bombing, there was police surveillance down there and other stuff. And so there's a lot of things related to that. If we could get people that would go on record, but again, that's another difficult.
And then I'm sure you probably looked into, you had the situation of, was McVeigh at that motel. When was he there? The woman talking about he was there on Easter Sunday when it didn't fit in the timeline. What did you investigate? Look into that again. It just looked to me like somebody was impersonating me there or something, or the timeline didn't fit on some of these things.
Yeah, there's something that very well might be going on there. And there was if you might remember, what is that magazine that was no, anyway, you would know it. I can't. But anyway, they had a cover on the cover during the bombing. One of the covers had 2 or 3 ATF agents that were photographed at the Waco event, and one a twin brother of McVeigh. I don't know if you remember seeing that along the road along the way here, but I just point that out to say, was it a look-alike? Was it intentional, or was it McVeigh, or all the above? There's a number of those things that happened, and it could look like somebody was trying to make an appearance. So you'd either confuse the situation, or you would have a lot of witnesses say, "Oh yeah, I saw this and that." We don't know. That's the part of the cover-up. But I tell you what, there's a lot of people that saw McVeigh. We basically, those of us that were deep into this, we even think there was probably more than one Ryder driving around in downtown Oklahoma City intentionally.
Yeah, and then of course you have the whole John Doe #2 thing, and then there's mentioned in the chat room is Terrence Yakey, and I don't know if you've had a chance to talk to him. I mean, you talk about a suspicious death. I mean, geez, did you know him? Or I'm sure you talked to his family because they were vocal. I can't get a hold of them now, but they were very upset at first, at least.
That was one that I personally had an extreme close experience with all through it. The family, the place. I drove out with the family to the place that he was killed.
Can you just give just for the audience, give a little bit of an overview of what happened to him and what he was doing? Because he was the most outspoken member of the police force on what was going on. Hello? Uh-oh. Did we lose Charles? Charles, I hope we can bring you back in. Well, that was strange. Oh, here he is. He's coming up, and I don't know if I can. Charles, are you there? Charles? Oh, shoot, I need to. Tony, can you bring Charles back in? Tony? Hey, Tony? Tony, can you bring Charles back in? Because he's back now, but he's gone again.
His stream dropped off, Don. I'm trying to get him back.
Okay, yeah, because he'll probably come back. There he is. Here, if you can bring him in, I don't know. It says
his devices aren't connected yet. As soon as they do, I'll bring him in the stream. Don.
He was he was right starting. He was really in the midst of the police.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah,
great show. That's
please
all right.
come back, Charles.
This is live radio, ladies and gentlemen. This is
it is. And my audience, I'm sure, when he's talking about Terrence Yakey's death, you talk about an obvious hit on somebody who is a cop that was talking, and he starts to talk about it, and boom, it's connection set. So hopefully he'll be. But just it says device not connected. So
I'm just waiting for him to connect.
Yeah. So hopefully, yeah, because we were getting wrong because he's realized that this guy's he's talking about there's so few people left that are willing to talk, and he still is, and it's honest, it's amazing he's alive and well, and because most of them aren't, and that's what you find because I think he's there. Charles,
yeah,
are you back, Charles? Is he? I see him there. Can you get him?
Gotcha. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you can hear me.
I can hear. Yes,
we can.
You're live.
It had back. It said I was backstage and I couldn't find a button to correct it, but I finally.
Well, I think we thought they got you or something, right as you're talking about Terrence Yakey, and then you get cut off. So we're glad to have you back because that's really an interesting story. So if you can tell us about Terrence Yakey.
Yeah. So here's the deal. You imagine Oklahoma is a lot like there's a lot in Oklahoma City. A good part of Oklahoma City is it's like flatland. So West Oklahoma, Central Oklahoma, where that federal penitentiary was. Is west of Oklahoma City. It's just a bunch of flatland. So imagine farmland. You got those 2-lane roads. You got barbed wire fence, and every once in a while there's a creek that goes by and it's got a culvert. And so what the story was, the official story from law enforcement is he went out there in his, I think he had something like a Toyota Celica or something like that, and cut his wrist, and there was blood all in the pan of the floor. He closed the doors, locked them, went through the barbed wire fence and walked about, I want to say 30 or 40 feet to, down the way a little bit to this creek, and then went through another barbed wire fence as he walked through a big culvert that was probably about 4 feet tall. And I'm 5'6". It might have been 5 feet. I don't know, but I know I would have to bend down a little bit. He's a big man, like about a 6'2" or 6'3" guy. So he supposedly walked all the way through that, then had to go through another barbed wire fence on the other side because it went under the road, and then walked about 3/4 of a mile following that, and decided to go ahead and shoot himself because I guess he hadn't, cutting his wrist didn't do the job. And that's the official story. So I'm talking to the family. I'm out there. We're looking at it. We're walking a lot of it, not the whole thing, and everything else about the story, because I've talked to his mother and the sisters, multiple times. It's been a while since I've talked to him, but and his ex-wife, met with her numerous times. We, as a group, our group met with her, and I met with her personally and talked to her. And that's the sad thing about that in terms of the investigation is Yakey kept a lot of stuff to himself. So he didn't officially share it. So we have this problem, but we do know through others that he talked to that he was very concerned and he was doing his own quote investigation. And his death obviously screams that something shady was going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I would like to talk to his family. Because what I found in a lot of these cases, Charles, is that people, whether it's this 9/11 or any of these things, they will talk in the beginning, but then they kind of disappear, and then you can't get a hold of them. Do you think maybe they're tired, there's nothing else to say, or they just fear? I mean, certainly Yakey's family had to be terrified as to what happened to him, because I mean it's maybe the most ridiculous alleged suicide I've ever heard of. You talk about every possible way you can do it at one time. I mean, how can anybody believe that? But that's what we're told. That's what we're expected to believe.
Well, now none of the family told me this, but just having done this and lived like any of us have, it could be fear, and no doubt it's fear. Everybody's got some fear on this kind of stuff. But then most people don't want to do what we're doing, dig into it and pursue it. And so I think when they get caught in a situation like this, some of them, their conscience wants them to do something, which they will do, take some steps, but sticking with it is hard. And then, it's easy to get cynical. Most people don't have the stick-to-itiveness in politics or anything like this. So all those things work against, trying to uncover stuff.
Now, when you were attempting to expose the truth about this, did you ever attempt to talk to McVeigh, or did you talk to his family at all?
God, that's kind of funny. I had to stop and think about that I did attempt to talk to James Nichols. Yes. I did talk to Terry Nichols' mother, and I may have talked to his father. I can't remember. But, I've got some stuff. I got a story I just can't tell you, but it has to do with, I know people hate that. I hate when I do it, when people do it to me. It has to do with, it has to do with being a coincidental thing where somebody runs into Tim McVeigh's sister.
Yes.
And didn't know it, and they didn't reveal it. And they got close, and as time went by, she decided she needed to reveal that to this person. Mm-hmm. And that person couldn't handle it. So it ended their relationship.
Well, I would, because McVeigh's, and I have his sister's contact info. I emailed her before. She didn't answer me, but I actually talked to his father. I understand he died recently, but last year he actually answered the phone, and I was shocked. And of course, he wouldn't talk. I've said, he had nothing to say. But I'm amazed at these families that, because I mean, if you obviously you're more aware of it than anybody, but there's so much there that indicates that McVeigh, whatever his role was, definitely wasn't alone. And it's amazing to me that all the John Doe number twos, you're saying McVeigh being seen with two other people, and that was the story of this entire thing, that there was somebody around McVeigh, John Doe number two, somebody else. And so I'm wondering what McVeigh, because McVeigh's attitude was very strange. He didn't talk at all, really. He didn't testify in his own defense. So I'm just wondering what all the investigators did. Anybody did the because I don't know when the grand jury came along. They came along before he was executed, right? I mean, did anybody ever get to talk to McVeigh? It seems to me like it's amazing that he wasn't interviewed more.
It's kind of funny, Don, because I worked today with a guy that I've known for all this time, and he was very involved in the bombing as a private citizen, being involved with us and other groups, just doing that, looking in that stuff, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't even think about the interview today. I didn't remember that at the time we were having lunch. And his wife was with him. We're talking, blah, blah, blah. I'll start talking bombing stuff. And he says, oh, yeah, I've got this friend that worked down at the county jail. And, he's mentioned him before. And he said, yeah, he told me one time, he says, every time McVeigh or Nichols came through there when they did the state trials or they were helping with the federal stuff, he said, hey, these were the guys that would put the shackles on them and do this, that. And so he interfaced with them. And he said, Nichols was a jabbering, just jabbered away, just talked all the time. And he said, hey, nothing. It was like he was following orders. It was like he was following training.
Yeah. Very sad. Well, what was Nichols saying?
He didn't say because it wasn't really the issue. He was just making the point that the difference between Terry Nichols was a guy that would just jabber away and talk, and maybe nervous talk for that matter.
Well, you mentioned his brother James Nichols, who I think is deceased now, unfortunately, but he was outspoken. Didn't he write a book about saying, arguing against the official story?
Yeah, but when I can't remember. I couldn't do a better job of putting it in a timeline. But by the time I talked to him, whenever that happened, he was far enough down the road and past just getting legal issues that he did not want to talk to us. He didn't want to get in trouble. Let me put it that way. I think he would have talked to me and us more, and if things had been different. But he was trying to stay out of jail and stuff. So I sensed that he was trying to be heavy on that side and keep himself free.
Well, Nichols is still alive, right? Terry Nichols?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, has anybody attempted to? I mean, I wonder if there's a way to contact him. Talk about an interesting interview. I wonder what that guy would have to say.
Well, Kathy Sanders, Wilburn Sanders, she's done that.
Oh, she has. God, I wish she'd talk to me then. She says, well, maybe that's what she's talking about. She said she's working on a documentary and she signed a non-disclosure agreement or something.
Yeah, and so she's got a lot of letters she's written back and forth with him. She's actually, I got to hand it to Kathy. She's done a great job from a Christian point of view. She got over, the anger and whatever, and truly has forgiven him. Didn't have any, and she's reached out to him in a kind of a Christian way, find out stuff, but also treating him like a decent human being, which I got to hand it. So she's had a lot of interesting discussion.
Boy, well, I wish she'd talk to. Because I know she's done a lot of work on it. Edie Smith, her daughter, told me, and I said she's the one to talk to. So I don't know. Maybe we'll see the documentary. Maybe I'll try her again or something. Somebody in the chat room wants to know if you talked to you. You must have talked to General Ben Parton, did you?
Yeah, Parton has passed away too. He's
yes,
been years, but yeah, I talked to Parton a lot. But as the years went by, we didn't talk. But and he went into a home and had Alzheimer's or something like that. Chris Emery of our group is the last one to talk to him, and he has some funny stories to tell when he went up to in the D.C. area of Virginia to visit him. At one of them, you can just imagine how this story would go. It's not a really big story, but he said Parton actually picked him up at the airport or somewhere, and they drove back to his house. And he said, "Here's Parton pulls up, and this brigadier general retired pulls up in a great big old Cadillac, picks him up, and just floors it out of the airport." Yeah. Picture of an old man, an old army. He's just little old lady from Pasadena, Anyway, so Parton was a really interesting guy, and I mean, you couldn't have a better example of an expert that comes out and speaks on this issue.
Absolutely.
In addition to that, you have all these other experts. And then in contrast to that, you really don't have any experts that are on the other side that are demonstrating how it happened. There's been one or two that have come out that they've just very generally, vaguely said, "Oh yeah, the government." Blah. And then when they get nailed down, they fade off. They go away. I don't know if you noticed that or not, but nobody will really stand up for the government side unless they can just do it without standing any scrutiny. If they can do it independently without having to stand scrutiny.
Absolutely. So you worked at, so you were in, how were you associated with the grand jury that Hoppy Heidelberg was like the most vocal member of? How did that, where along the process did that occur? And talk a little bit about them.
And sometimes people get grand juries mixed up. There's actually the quote official Oklahoma County grand jury that I got established along with Glenn Wilburn and our attorney who's passed away. He's a great guy. But then what Hoppy did a citizens grand jury, which is not associated, it's not necessarily directly associated with statutes or the laws of Oklahoma, but it's more of an organic legal issue, a legal right. And so they did that on that basis. And so both of them were good because, well, I've always had an interest all my life. And then when I got into politics, I continue to have the interest in juries, in the Constitution, those founding kind of principles, things like that. So I was real well aware of how juries function and what they could do, et cetera, et cetera. And the state of Oklahoma happened to be one of only 2 states in the United States that have in their Constitution the ability of citizens to put together a simple petition on a piece of paper just by typing it up, writing it up, handwriting it up, and saying, we think that the sheriff of such and such county is stealing money out of the till or whatever. He needs to be investigated. And that will put a grand jury in place to investigate. And it used to happen fairly frequently in Oklahoma. So anyway, I knew that. So I met Glenn and JD, working mainly with Glenn and JD. And then this attorney friend of mine, his name Mark Sanford, great guy. We were just friends, and he offered to do the legal work for us. And he's very competent. So we started work. I brought that up to Glenn when we saw what was going on, because the early days would have been from the time the bombing happened until about August and September, when the defense attorneys, Tiger and Stephen Jones and the others, were appointed and taken over, and they were doing their press releases and what have you. And so then everybody started seeing kind of how this was turning. And then you start seeing the feds started changing their rhetoric and saying things a little bit differently, a little differently. They just start altering things as they went along. So I said, look, we can do our own grand jury here. There's no reason we can't, and we shouldn't. We have all the ability and authority to do it, and we should do it to oversee this because it happened here, and also to see what the feds are doing, make sure they're doing the right job. So we went down that path, and they immediately fought us. Mm-hmm. Here's what's interesting. I'm trying to keep this on a simple level because these things can bog down in a legal mumbo.
Right, exactly.
Here's what happened is we didn't know this, but when we filed the petition, okay, I'll back up and say a couple of other things. I think we needed something like 2,500 signatures or something, but we got about 10,000 or 13,000. We had way more than what we needed. We filed it with the court, which is all we had to do, and the judge rejected it. Well, the judge would not have even any law that would give him the ability to reject, except as things happen in our country. Along the way, the Oklahoma legislature had passed a law that was actually in violation of the constitutional. We have a constitutional amendment that allows these things to happen. The legislature passes something that violates it. Nobody had ever challenged it. Didn't need to be challenged, hadn't had an opportunity. Here we had one, so we did the research. Our attorney did it. And not only was it unconstitutional, but we also had a 1964 Oklahoma Supreme Court case in which virtually the exact same question had come before that court, and the court unanimously in a published decision said, not just no, but hell no, you can't do this. These people can have a grand jury. So boom. What they did is they slowed it down for 1 year and 3 months as we had to appeal it. So 1 year and 3 months later, we got our case before the Oklahoma Supreme Court. We won and we moved forward. And that's when they tried to indict. That's when they subpoenaed me, my close friend Ken Blood, who was part of the bonding committee, my secretary, before a standing Oklahoma grand jury, which functions much like the federal standing grand juries. It was patterned after those. and it was only to scare the hell out of us. And it did. It scared the hell out of us. It cost us money to get attorneys and stuff like that. So I'm getting off on the road. Take me back to where you want to go now.
Well, I'm trying to think because there's so many players, and that Hoppy Heidelberg is gone too as well. He's left this.
Yes.
And he seemed that. So this grand jury, I got the impression he was really the one that was driving it and was the one that was searching for the truth. Did you work much with him? What did you think of Hoppy?
Oh, worked a lot with Hoppy, and I loved him to death. And I'll say this: I hope it's taken right, because I'm kind of a direct person, and sometimes it's taken incorrectly. But I loved Hoppy, and Hoppy loved me. As far as I know, we got along great. But Hoppy was just going to tell it like it is, pretty much like I just described myself. And sometimes people don't like that or can't handle it. You know?
Right. Well, I'm pretty sure Hoppy was in it, because for people out there that denigrate Alex Jones, and he's certainly different than he was then, but he did a great job of covering this back in the day. Were you ever on Alex Jones? I know Hoppy Heidelberg was.
Yeah, I was on Alex Jones. I don't know how many times, 6 or 8 or times. I don't know. But.
Right. But he was. So for those of you out there that think this guy back in that day, because really the internet was just getting started. And the other one was, I think you probably were interviewed. Were you interviewed by the Spotlight and the Radio Free America program back then? I'm pretty sure you were, weren't you?
Yeah, I mean, we actually counted up. I could tell you why I know this number, but we had a lot of people came in to help us. But there was like we quit counting at about 650 different interviews.
Wow. Well, it was great, but that was alt media back then, and the Spotlight became the American Free Press. I write for the American Free Press now regularly, and there's not many free newspapers left in America, but Spotlight did a great job covering Oklahoma City. And Alex Jones, when he was just starting out, I don't think were you guys getting on any other, I don't know what other shows. I could maybe have some radio shows you were getting on. What other outlets were available to you then?
Here's what's interesting. Yeah, I did. I mean, you know than I do. We had back in the day, in those times, there was radio all over the place, local radio, and so I was doing it all over the country like crazy.
Yeah,
600 and some odd came from, but also I did Hannity and Combs multiple times. I did.
Did you? Oh, did you really? Wow.
Bill O'Reilly, the TV and radio. I did. I think I did about 6, most of them Fox programs. I believe I did a Huckabee. Most of them were really good. And on Hannity and Combs was a lot more friendly than Hannity was.
I would say I wouldn't think Hannity was too kind to you. Well, it's a shame. Like Tucker Carlson probably would be more receptive to you now. I don't know, but maybe because it's an older issue. But I think the way he approaches other issues now. But
I had somebody who was an investigator that actually lives back in the D.C. part of the country, in that area, that said, I'm trying to remember the timeline, but it was probably at least 6 months ago, maybe the latter part of last year, said that he had talked to a producer, one of Tucker's top producers, and that producer was really interested in the Oklahoma City bombing and Merrick Garland.
Yeah, that's so people realize that this guy is right in the center of the madness today. Was these people, if they live long enough, you can see how they have their fingers in so many of these pies. And but this is, I mean, Oklahoma City is important but of course we just saw Randy Weaver just died the other day, and these things are connected. During the 90s, I call the Clinton administration conspiracy central. But you had Randy Weaver, Ruby Ridge, who this horrible tragedy there where the law enforcement shot and blew off his head. Blew off his wife's head while she was holding a baby, killed his son. Horrible things, and they ended up getting a big award from juries, which is a financial award, which is unusual in this. And then you had Waco, and that's the official version is that Timothy McVeigh was so upset about Waco, as a lot of people were, that he was inspired to do this. But all those things came in, other than the jury award to the Weaver family. The rest of it was swept under the rug. And do you think, as I do, that this kind of corruption and the fact that went unpunished has led us to where we are today, where it's just massive corruption on parade?
Yeah, I think we're tracking on some things right here real well. But our report was at a publisher, and it was due to come out. This was in the latter part of August of 2011. just before 9/11. And the
Mhm.
press was really, in local press and some national, kept in contact with me, and they kept saying, "Hey, is that report ready? Is it report? Is it ready? Is it ready? Is it ready?"
Mhm.
So we're just about ready to get it done, and it came out about a week before 9/11. But when 9/11 hit, I got all kinds of news all of a sudden, and they wanted to know, what do how does this relate, and what's this mean? It's kind of instinctively back in that time. I just said, well, if you don't pursue these things, if you don't pursue them properly to bring justice, it will happen again, or something will happen again. There's a cause and effect of not doing the right thing also.
Absolutely. I've been asked in the chat room a few times, what do you know about Cody Snodgrass? Have you heard of that person?
That sounds familiar, but I can't picture it. Why?
I don't know either. I guess he's written a book on Oklahoma City maybe recently or whatever. So how do we stand? I'm going to keep you a little over since you're late, but I won't keep you too much longer, maybe 10 minutes or so. That's okay.
Yeah, I've got time. There's no problem.
Okay. So where do we? So you said basically at this point you're not really actively investigating it anymore. Is there anybody today that other than Kathy Sanders, who apparently signed a non-disclosure agreement? So hopefully it'll be a great documentary. Is there anybody else out there who's actively? Jana Davis, you said you don't know where she is. No, nobody is really talking about this anymore. Has Oklahoma City just become a cold case?
Well, maybe I need to redefine this. Let's do that, because I think actively I was thinking in terms. I mean, really, on a daily basis, like almost like a job. You're seeking information, and nobody's really doing that. But all of us that we've talked about, I think I've mentioned a number of us, we're still open and receiving information. And a lot of people know us. They want to get information to somebody that they'd look somebody like me up, or you or someone been pursuing this over the years.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've already investigated the heck out of it. The only thing left is what they're hiding.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And all these things kind of run together, because just those three incidents there, Ruby Ridge and Waco and Oklahoma City, you start to knock the dominoes over and they're all connected. And there's so many. You mentioned somebody like Merrick Garland, who's, saying today was involved in trying to make things more Orwellian than they are and have domestic terrorists. And you and I, Charles, would both probably
Yep.
the definition of domestic terrorists. And back in the day, pretty much all you guys, Hoppy Heidelberg, you, Glenn Warburg, and J.D. Cash, all you guys would have been domestic terrorists, wouldn't you, for actually questioning this stuff?
Yeah, I just kind of instinctively knew that I needed to just be out there. If I was going to do this, I needed to be out there, instead of try to keep a low profile or do this, whatever this was going to end up being. I'm just speaking very general. And then later, when I started getting pressure, somehow I just felt like that was wrong to stop, but also it was also from a strategic point of view wrong.
Well, you spent so much time. You've certainly done more than anybody could ask anybody to do, and you kind of, what are you going to do? You're running into a brick wall. Dr. Randall Heather and Vicky Beamer, are they both still with us? What do you know about them?
Vicky Beamer. Let me think about that for Beamer. Vicky Beamer. No, I'm thinking of a.
Well, she was the one, I believe, that was at the motel or something.
Yeah. Well, any of us that have been, and we stay in contact with each other in terms of pursuing this actively. Yeah, in terms of this being an active thing in our lives, we talk with each other. But I don't think anybody's talked to Vicky in a long time. She may have moved from Kansas to a southern state years ago and may still reside there. There was also the lady that owned Dreamland Hotel. She eventually moved, I think, and went to another state. We were talking about people being intimidated back in Kansas when you had the Ryder truck shop and you had that mechanic, Tom Kessinger, who the feds, remember the owner, Eldon, and the Vicky Beamer, who we're talking about, both of them were adamant. No, this is what they saw. It was not a mix up. And they tried to spin it. This were a real big eye opener for me. And then Tom Kessinger, a third person that worked there that was a mechanic, was just taking his break in that little bitty office and was there. And they asked all of them, will you do hypnosis? Well, Kessinger's the only one that agreed to do it. And after he did it, they came out with I'll never forget it, big, press release the next morning. we found out what the deal was. Is it was this mix up between two different parties that came in 2 different days. Blah blah blah. We put the, and just ignored Eldon and Vicky. Just ignored them. And but they told the press. I mean, they told the press and lots of press that had them on that they were wrong. But you know how it works. You know how it works with the press.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I imagine you said you were on radio shows, and they did have more talk radio back then before the internet that were willing to keep. And I'm amazed you got on people. How was O'Reilly? Was O'Reilly receptive to what you were saying?
Yeah, he was. But some of my experiences, it's hard to know if it's just the way they do it, and it was my fault, a producer's fault, or whatever. But some of those shows, I would spend 2.5 hours on the phone, different phone calls with the producer just to prep for doing the show. Mm-hmm. And then I would be all kind of like prepped up, like, man, this is all going to have to fit in this nice little box here. And then you get on the show and it goes off somewhere else. And I don't know, it threw me off on some of those shows, but the easier ones were Combs. Combs was easy to deal with. Mike Huckabee is real easy to deal with. And some others like that. But
interesting. But what about Randall Heather? Do you know anything about Randall Heather?
I've never looked up Heather. I don't know anything about him. But that'd be look up.
That's one of my researchers asking. Believe me, he's on top of all these things. Did you get a chance to meet Stephen Jones or McVeigh's defense team? What did you think of them? They've come under a lot of criticism from research.
I got to know Stephen Jones well and spent a lot of time with him over the years since then, just not only on this issue, but just in politics in general, because he's real active in politics, and I'm still remained active in politics here. He's a good guy. He's a good kind of attorney that most people, I think, would like to have, because he's an independent and he represents his client well.
Well, the judge refused to let him put and wasn't that the Jana Davis defense? Who was it? The defense brief that was 150 some pages. Was that based on the work of Jana Davis that they refused to allow into evidence?
Are you thinking when the McVeigh federal trial started that they wouldn't let Stephen Jones, the attorney, put a lot of evidence in? So what he did? Yeah. What do you call it? A writ of mandamus or something? Mm-hmm. Kind of, I'm going to put this in. It's a way of getting something in the record, even though they won't, quote, officially let it in.
Well, that was because basically that was his defense. It was all about Andrei Strassmeyer, and that was Jana Davis's work, wasn't it?
A lot of it was, yeah. A bunch of it was, but it wasn't really hers. But see, so anything Middle Eastern basically was her or connected to her work.
Okay, so she's pushing that, yeah.
Yeah, so they used all of that. Plus, I don't know if you remember that. I'm sure you do, but it's just a long time. Remember all of the Philippines stuff?
Yeah, yeah.
And it was in that Philippines when. So
Nichols had a history there, right? He was in the Philippines and everything.
Yeah, and so what we find out later, I know we don't have a lot of time, but find out later is there were some of these guys. I'm trying to think of their names now that were in Manila. They were making a bomb in this apartment complex. It caught on fire. So if somebody calls the fire department, they come in and they find out what they were doing, investigating, and police come in and they call the U.S. FBI in Manila, because they say, look, we found this laptop and it has this stuff on here, and it's the name is slipping my mind right now, the players in the organization, but it has this stuff about bombing the U.S., blah, blah, blah. So Project Bojinka is what was on there. Well, some years go down the road, not only had Oklahoma City just happened, but a few more years go down the road, you have 9/11. It was Project Bojinka, flying planes into specific buildings as a terrorist act, among other things. Yeah. And for the audience, just for their information, you might remember when 9/11 happened in Minneapolis. Remember, there was that female FBI bureau chief that came in. Her name was Colleen Rowley. Mm-hmm. Came out and they were answering questions about some of these guys that allegedly had taken the training in the plane so they could fly them into the building. Whether that really happened or not is another story. But they're taking questions on that. And she said, we had requested that laptop and that information about Project Bojinka goes back to this Manila event that happened related to the Oklahoma City bombing. And she said they would not give us the information. They never would respond to us. They just wouldn't give it to us. So
Well,
interesting connection of
yeah, there's so many connections and so many things that weren't investigated, as you know all too well. But I can't tell you how much we appreciate the work you did, and unfortunately, there's so many people like you that if we can ever overthrow this tyranny that it's just completely taken hold of us, people like you are going to make the history books as real heroes. I appreciate all the work you did. Are you? Is your screen frozen, Charles? Are you still there? Okay.
yeah. I
Okay.
appreciate
Yeah. Look like
the whole
no.
bunch.
You
You know,
go ahead.
it takes a lot of us to do what we're talking about, and I don't know how it's going to look, how it's going to happen, but maybe it's just a matter of there's more of us than there are them, and when it's like the Berlin Wall or something, when it falls over, you're working towards it, but you're not really expecting it to happen, and boom, there it is all of a sudden.
There's a lot more of us, that's for sure. I don't know when we're going to realize it. We flex our muscles. I mean, God, we're outnumbering them by the millions, folks.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate everything you did. I appreciate you coming on and staying a little bit over. And great work. And keep on fighting all you can do. I know you haven't given up, but you things, this is in so many cases that have happened since then. 9/11 first and foremost, which is similarities there. And so it gets Oklahoma City kind of gets lost in the shuffle. Terry Nichols, do you know what prison he's in? I'm going to try to contact him.
It's in Colorado, outside of where's that School of the Mines? It's north of Pueblo. Huh. Can't think of it.
Well, I have to look it up. But I appreciate again all your work and coming on the show. Anything you want to promote, or anybody that get in contact with you or anything?
No, I just want to say I appreciate what I know you've been doing this for a long time too, and I appreciate everything you do. And sorry it's hard to get a hold of, but I'd be happy.
I appreciate you coming, and I know it's you're worth waiting for, and you're worth having on the show. Thanks so much. We'll have to have you on again sometime. And former state representative Charles Key of Oklahoma, great guy, great researcher. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Take care. Thank you. Yeah, Tony, if you're there, do you want to say, when I look at the chat room, I'm going to open up the phone lines if you want to do that. Lots of people in the chat. Good to see you. I want to say, whoever MB, that's just the way it is. You've made my day, because you're calling me handsome and hot and like a founding father. So I don't know who you are, but thank you very much for the kind words. But so what's the phone number to call, Tony? Can we open up the phone line?
Yeah, let me put the phone in. It's 888-770-1776. Let me uplink that.
Cool. So we love talking with you. So anybody wants to call, and hope you guys like like Charles Key's great guy. And this, keep in mind, you talked about all those people that are dead and are not talking, and he was right in the center of an event that doesn't seem like it, but you're talking about that was 27 years ago, Oklahoma City bombing. Hard to believe that now, but that's kind of, so many things have happened since then. 9/11 first and foremost, that it's really superseded, shared a lot of things in common with that. Tony, what are your thoughts on the Oklahoma City bombing? Have you looked into it much?
Oh, absolutely. I interviewed Chris Emery. He was talking about that. I put together the Noble Lie documentary. It was a great show. I interviewed him on the anniversary of Oklahoma City last year. So yeah, I've looked into this extensively, and it still should be on the forefront. There were so many unanswered questions. A lot went into it, and of course we know. I mean, some key facts like Joe Biden for one, and his associates had the Patriot Act written before Oklahoma City. And it was what became the Patriot Act. I mean, they tried to ram that through after Oklahoma City, and it wasn't quite enough. That's where you get the monitoring of bank accounts. You get with the monitoring the amount of cash withdrawn, all that stuff. That was those were put into the bones, and everything for the Patriot Act were written right before Oklahoma City. It wasn't enough to get it past 9/11. Was what they needed. It was just I guess they learned their lesson from Oklahoma City. But yeah, so much weird activity prior to, and what kind of person, what was Tim McVeigh? I've read extensively on this. What was he? And I was in the Army too. I mean, he strikes me as like a perfect Manchurian candidate, because they describe his personality and like who he was, and I find him as a mystery. And who knows if he was he still working for the Army, or was he still working for the government? What was he working for? That's a great question too, because you look at Bill Cooper talked to the FBI because he was approached by two men prior to Oklahoma City, one that looked exactly like Tim McVeigh, another unidentified man was with him. They came by his work. He had his radio studio inside his shopping center at the time, and they asked him about what they should do if they get pulled over. This is you go look in the book Pale Horse Rider. It's all in there, but this was documented. And Cooper said that one of the men that was supposedly McVeigh said that he had a tracking system in his right buttock. He had a
I heard that. Yeah,
and the other guy had one in his shoulder, is what he said. And he said he had Bill said, "You want to touch that?" And McVeigh supposedly offered, said, "Bill, you can touch my backside. You can touch my right." But he's like, "No, it's okay." But he said it was a really odd conversation. They told him to watch Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
So something just very strange about Oklahoma City. It's not the official. We know the official narrative is complete garbage.
Absolutely, and I'm just amazed about. I for some reason I never thought of Terry Nichols. I mean, he's still alive. He's really connected. And his brother, he was saying James. Charles was saying James, but I know James Nichols. I remember him talking to the Spotlight a lot, and I know he put out a book. Of course, he died all too soon, and some of these people do. And if you can read David Hoffman's book, I still think that's the best book on the case, Oklahoma City and the Oklahoma City bombing and the politics of terror. But here, and again, just a typical JFK assassination type death. He dies in Europe after being while in police custody for something. I had heard he was in trouble with the law for something because he wrote this book. I don't know, but it's a great book.
You got a caller, Don. Welcome to I Protest with Don Jeffries. You're on the air.
Hi, my name is Chris. Bill Cooper was visited by Tim McVeigh and John Doe number 2. I remember hearing him actually talk about it on the Hour of the Time. And John Doe number 2 was the one that actually did most of the talking. But apparently McVeigh did offer to show his right buttock to Mr. Cooper, and Mr. Cooper did not appreciate that. But he said that in hindsight, he wished he had taken him up on the offer to see if he was microchipped. But
that story's always just stuck with me because again, Bill Cooper was interviewed he agreed to meet with the FBI over it because it was just so. I mean, obviously trying to set him up or set something up with it, and his answers were.
They mentioned that they were going to blow up a federal building if he wanted to go with them, and he goes, "Get the hell out of here!"
Right.
I don't want anything to do with what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's the lessons learned from that. I mean, again, questions will probably never be answered, but we do know the official story is complete garbage. That's the real conspiracy theory. Like, the logistics too of the bombing itself, like how to explain the damage done to this building by a truck like that. I mean, it's a hard target, and again, that's
there was. You're right. You're correct. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, good, great call, and always appreciate you, Chris, and thanks for backing me up.
One more thing,
Go ahead,
Tony, if I could. I wanted to ask. I wanted Don to see if he could ask Mr. Key if he knew about the report that Terrence Eakey had filed where he claimed he watched an odd-looking black kind of helicopter hovering above the motor building right as the blasts began, because he had someone pulled over on the side of the road, and the person that he had pulled over also filed a report as well. And they said it was just weird, like a weird light coming from the helicopter, and it kind of reminds me of, there was a similar helicopter in the destruction of at least one of the twin towers right as it was going down as well, just hovering there in the smoke. And I was just wondering if Mr. Keys, obviously he's not there now, but I was just wondering if he had heard that very odd report, because I think there was a lot more going on there than just the bombs inside the building. That's about it. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Phone lines are still open. 888-770-1776. You'd like to talk to Don?
Yes,
Or
I'd love to talk to you guys. Yeah, so it's, but I think that, you get, and he mentioned Merrick Garland. That was very important, because you see how these things are connected and how this is a timeline. That's why history is so important. The past is prologue. So many, people that were right in the middle of that. Somebody like Merrick Garland. And because the truth was never known, people like Charles Keyes, state representative, tried to push it. Hoppy Heidelberg, very courageous juror, General Ben Parton, who was the brigadier general, and he was the foremost expert in the country on explosives. So you have a bomb expert that's a brigadier general, and the guy couldn't get on 60 Minutes or anything like that. Nobody was interested in it. It's like, what more credentials do you need than that? And then you had the original coverage. And it used to be available. Somebody might have sent it to me years ago. I might have it on VHS somewhere. Of the, I'm sure you've probably seen it, Tony, the original local news coverage of Oklahoma City State. Yeah, you've seen that when they talk about bombs constantly. And it reminds me of the coverage that Scott Myers from Texas sent me years ago. And according to Chris, he thinks it came through Bill Cooper. He was the one who recorded it. I guess but anyhow, I got videotaped coverage live from a local Boston station after when JFK's plane was missing. And it was the same kind of thing. It's the Oklahoma City bombing. You heard constant references to bombs in the building, not the magic fertilizer bomb, but other bombs in the building. And same thing with JFK Jr. You heard constant references to the 9:39 p.m. phone call where JFK was reporting all was calm and he's awaiting landing instructions, which of course the government would subsequently say, no, there were no communications at all. They had constant references to it. And of course, the Coast Guard sent out Petty Officer Todd Bergen to give an interview on air with Susan Warnick. I've tried to get a hold of Susan Warnick many, many times. She will not talk. And of course, she was rewarded by getting a Profiles in Courage Award from the Kennedy Library, of all things. The Kennedy Library just specializes in giving awards to people who screwed and killed their relatives. People like George W. Bush got one.
We've got it called on. Oh,
okay.
Oh, we did. Sorry. They just hung up.
Oh, well, call back, please, caller, because we love hearing from you.
It's 888-770-1776 if you'd like to talk to Don. Keep the phone lines open.
Absolutely. But so that's why the local news coverage is really important. It said it with the JFK assassination as well, too. You look at the early news coverage and the Secret Service agent being killed, the pool of blood found, the Secret Service agent ran out, supposedly tried to warn him, which Chris is working on for me now. Things like that, not to mention the early witnesses, everybody going towards the grassy knoll, not the repository. Those are important because the narrative hasn't been established yet. And certainly in all of the mass shootings, Sandy Hook and all them, look at the early reporting. It's just full of things that later, oh, no, that actually wasn't true. Because, of course, it contradicts what usually is a fairy tale narrative.
Here's your
It's
call,
very
Don.
important. Okay, great.
You're on.
Hello?
You're on with Don Jeffries. Go ahead. Turn down your radio, please.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Hello?
You can turn down your radio. You can talk to
Okay,
Don.
I just muted.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I'm the White Wolf. The
Oh, cool. Okay.
my name is Michael Bradley, and don't let too many people know that, but but I'm the White Wolf. I just wanted to congratulate Don on the great work that he does, and I watched him on David Knight this past week, and I also watched your shows on David Knight, and you had an excellent interview with Gary on Wednesday.
Well, thank you.
Just absolutely groundbreaking, I think, for a lot of people. And,
well, I appreciate that.
I mean, Gary is right over the target when he says that that basically we're just being treated to one big global clown show, and that we don't really have any dogs in this fight, so to say. Trump or Biden, they're just two sides of the same coin.
Right. It's unfortunate, but that's the truth.
Yep. And I think this goes back a long way, actually. I think it goes all the way back to even before World War One. You had Winston Churchill in North Africa setting up the concentration camps there, and all of these things are just beta tests. They want to see how we react, and then they study our reactions and they hone their plans. And that's really what the pandemic was all about, seeing how the sheep will react. And, it was very discouraging to see all these people running around with masks, and I still see people wearing masks. At the farmer's market this morning, I still saw people wearing masks, because it's like, what are these people so scared of? It's like, here we are 2 years. I mean, have you ever heard of a virus that just keeps going for 2 years? Even the 1918 flu epidemic wore itself out after about 14 months. And this thing just has legs. It just keeps going and going. It's a psyop. I mean, I don't understand people at this point. I really don't. I don't know how they can be so stupid to keep falling for this stuff. And another thing I'm noticing, and this is what really worries me, is that the country is being balkanized. I hear politicians right now, they're talking like the Austrian painter was. You know who I'm referring to?
Yes.
And they're just coming right out and gearing us up for World War III. I mean, what do they want? Do they want Putin to start firing nukes at various cities? I mean, it's like, they're using Putin as the madman narrative, and we've heard that before. We heard it with Saddam. I mean, I remember the first Gulf War back in 1989, 1990. Remember how Desert Shield just kind of morphed into Desert Storm, and we just had to get Saddam. He was another Hitler. He was going to take over the whole Middle East. That's what we were told. That's why we had to put down Saddam. And it's like, I mean, at least back then the stories were a little bit more consistent. Now it's like the narrative seems to change every 2 weeks. And
well, I agree with you. I'm going to let Don comment on some of your comments, if that's okay. We'll see if we can't get another couple of callers in. But I appreciate you, White Wolf.
Sure,
Thanks for tuning in.
All right, take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, White Wolf. I'm sorry I can't comment directly to these guys, but it's great hearing from you. White Wolf, very nice things. I appreciate it. Nice name. I wonder if it's the tip of the hat to you, Tony. I don't know if he's got the wolf in his name.
I think he had that before me. But I remember seeing him in the comments a long time ago, but who knows, right?
Just Jim is saying some nice things about me in the chat room too, but he also wished me happy birthday. Just my birthday's in August, Jim. I'm sure where you got that from.
I was going to say, because today's my dad's birthday, and I don't think that you share the birthday with my dad, but I thought I would have known that by now.
Yeah, no. My birthday's in August, but but the caller made a point about how this happened before World War I, way before. Tony. Obviously, I talk a lot about the Civil War and Lincoln, and I think most of it started then. But Hidden History 3 will be filled with that kind of stuff, because I didn't know. Thanks to Peter Tsikosh, that was mostly sending me the stuff on that era. But it was amazing the kind of foreign policy that we really built up following the Spanish-American War, of 1898, when we made our first foray into globalism, the first false flag with the sinking of the Maine, which court historians admit now, it wasn't the Spanish that did that, but still, it still precipitated the war. After that, we had the war in the Philippines, which no one's really looked at. And boy, full of the same kind of atrocities, the same kind of scorched earth stuff, horrible things they did to civilians. And then you had during Wilson. Wilson was really a modern interventionist president. He invaded Mexico like 9 times or so. He kept going into Mexico and the Dominican Republic, Haiti. He did some awful things in Haiti, and I'll have a lot of that in the book as well. But you can see that this kind of interventionist foreign policy was built during that time. And I think there's a quote from Henry Kissinger that I found that, we can thank all our modern foreign policy is built on Wilson, and really was. That guy was just amazing. And just to show you just a little anecdote I found to show you how awful these court historians are. It was a television little piece they were trying to, and they were typically trying to build Woodrow Wilson as they would do to Lincoln or FDR. Any of these historical icons they want to build into that were tyrants in reality to varying degrees. Disastrous for the people, but they want to make them out to be heroes. So they're trying to make Wilson look really cool. So this historian, and I can't forget the guy's name, but he's talking about, Woodrow Wilson, little Woodrow Wilson as a kid, he was already into this stuff so much that he drafted a constitution for his Little League baseball team. Now, Woodrow Wilson, I believe, would have been a little kid in the 1860s when baseball was just being, popularized. Little leagues didn't begin until the 1940s. And again, there's nobody there to say, what are you talking about? And what would a constitution for a little league team? But what does that even mean? A constitution for a little? But they throw these things out and nobody calls them on it. Right. You know how preposterous that is? I mean, you're talking about the man. No, he wasn't playing Little League baseball because they didn't exist. And yet he gets away with it. And there's no Don Jeffries or anybody on TV to point out how ridiculous he is. And what defense would he have for that? How do you make a mistake like that? You're making up an anecdote that is so untrue. It's much like I found, anecdotal things where they tried to say that Lincoln's hatred of Jefferson, which he definitely had, was somewhat built on the Sally Hemings thing. And again, there's no evidence that this thing was popularized, that they were talking about that at all in Lincoln's era. There was a kind of a non-specific allegation that James Callender alleged, and that's where it came from, against Jefferson during the campaign of 1800, which was one of the dirtiest in history between Jefferson and Adams, who later, of course, became great correspondents with each other. But Callender was a bidder. He'd been promised office, but Jefferson, and he'd done some work for him. So he just, took off after him and came up with this ridiculous story. But there's no Lincoln was born till 1809. And I don't think the story had legs beyond that. So again, people say these things and there's nobody there to say, wait a minute, that doesn't fit in the timeline. So it's one of those things. I love the way the chat is really very active here. Am I missing anything? Walter Craig, White Wolf. And White Wolf says the Titanic was not sunk by an iceberg. And I've heard more and more, and I used to really, when the movie Titanic came out, that was one of my non-conspiratorial interests. I thought was not conspiratorial. I was kind of interested in it. I thought it for a while.
Yeah, I've got the Titanic Museum here in Branson. I need to go check it out. I've been there for over 2 years and I've never gone. It's like it's built like the Titanic, it has the replica.
Oh, cool! But the theory now is that because John Jacob Astor, right, who went down with the ship, and something fishy happened there, because the Titanic was a microcosm. And I've used the analogy, Tony, I've said recently, we hit the iceberg, the Titanic's going down, and we're not getting on the lifeboats because we're in steerage, and nobody on the lifeboats from steerage. And John Jacob Astor should have been on one of those lifeboats. I mean, this is one of the most important men on the ship, if not the most important. Why he didn't, I don't know. But of course, the theory. Now. Okay, we'll take you.
You're on I Protest with Don Jeffries. Go ahead. Caller, do we have you on the line? You're on I Protest with Don Jeffries. Oh, Well,
Oh,
guess
there
not.
you can't hear me. Okay, well,
Good morning.
There we go. Go ahead.
oh, there.
Yes, good morning. My name's Will. I'm from Sydney, Australia.
Hey, Will.
Cool.
How are you, mate?
Yeah, be sure and turn down your radio if you have another device on, so we don't have an echo.
Oh, no worries. I'll just turn it down now for you. There you go. Is that better?
There you go. Much better.
Oh, terrific. I just wanted to call in and say good day to Don. I've been listening to you, actually to Don for quite a few years now, and I always find it informative, and he's got such a good way of expressing and giving information out, you know.
Well, thank
I
you.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, I just thought I'd call up and just generally shoot the breeze, see how he is, and actually finally get to say hello, because I spent a lot of time doing volunteer work, and while I'm doing it, I put my headphones on and listen to Don.
He's in Australia, you said, Tony? You said
Yeah,
he's in
Australia.
Australia? Wow, very
Yeah.
cool. Very cool.
I listen to Don too. I even produce his podcast and I listen to him over again. You can always learn something from. I've been learning things from Don Jeffries for years now, and he's a treasure trove of information and research. He's an American treasure, as a matter of fact. I've said that many times. We are lucky to have him.
Oh, very kind.
Yeah, it seems to me your country seems to grow a lot of freedom thinkers, whereas my country, unfortunately, it really is. It's almost like I live in the Walking Dead movie.
Yeah,
Me too.
it's not much different.
We've got people they are so enamored with their government, enamored with authority. Somebody puts a white coat on and they simply stop and listen and follow orders. It's actually bizarre to watch.
It really is, and frightening. But well, we
Yeah.
appreciate you calling in. I'm gonna keep the phone lines open. You
Sure
have
do.
anything else to say to Don?
Oh, no, actually, so I can't talk to him directly.
He can hear you right now. Absolutely, go ahead.
He can't hear me though, right? He's not hearing me.
Is he talking to someone else at the moment?
No.
No, I'm talking to you, but you can't hear me. He can't hear me. Okay.
Good morning, Don. How are you, mate?
Fine. Can you hear me?
No,
You can't hear me, can
it's the audio through this board with it. It's really only good for questions and comments because Don can hear you.
I can hear you. He can't hear me.
We appreciate you calling in, and Don did hear your comments. So thanks again, and good luck. Hopefully we'll see you in the chat.
Just before I go, maybe you could ask Don if he could maybe touch on the monkeypox that they're now pushing.
Yep, we'll touch on it. Thanks for calling. Yeah, absolutely. No, we didn't get to go over that this week. I mean, I'm kind of wondering it's like a buffet of potential fears they roll out, and I don't know what they're going to choose.
Yeah.
You go back to murder hornets and the small.
We missed them.
Monkeypox.
Just when you thought it was safe to go back into the trees, monkeypox. But yeah, it's well. And first of all, thank you so much. Was it Will? Will from Australia. Thank you so much. Very, very kind words, and it's really cool to think. It's great enough to know Tony and people like that listen to it. If somebody in Australia listens to me like that, that's
cool.
Wonderful. Very, very glad to hear that. Very nice to hear that. And yeah, monkeypox is. My sister was talking about that the other day because of course she watches TV. Like, you heard about it on TV. Don't worry about it, okay? And yeah, they just seem to be throwing everything but the kitchen sink now. They're throwing everything at the wall, and things are sticking. But no, I don't for one second believe that this is a thing, because why are all these deadly things happening? Like the caller brought up, how long is this going to? I don't know. I guess it was a caller before. We'll bring it up. How long is this vaccine? This virus going to last? It's 2 years now. It's great staying power. It's never going to go away. Same thing with how many poxes are we going to get? Are we going to? These almost like the biblical plagues that are going to come on us. I mean, it's ridiculous. Monkeypox. I mean, I'm very skeptical of that, to say the least.
Yeah. Well, going back to the Titanic, there's a lot of stuff there that I think there is history that needs to be re-examined. There was the little bit of predictive programming. There was a novel written in 1910, and there was a story in it about Titan, which was this unsinkable ship. Did you know about this, Don? Like 2 years before the Titanic in 1912, there was
Yeah, what's
an
that?
unsinkable ship in a novel 2 years prior. Like just
Yes, yes,
weird
yes,
predictive
yes.
programming. I mean,
And then
there's a lot there.
people think that the Titanic was actually the sister ship, which I can't remember what the name of the sister ship was. That's actually the one that sunk. There's a whole theory with that too. If you've heard, what was the sister ship? Yeah, but two of them came at the same time, and the Titanic sister ship, I can't remember what the name of it was. There's a lot of theories on it, obviously.
Yeah, there's something weird about 1912. I mean, you got the Federal Reserve meeting was on Jekyll Island on November 22nd, 1910. And it was. And that's when they had their meeting. They decided what they're going to call it, use the language, what kind of bill to pass through, and Senator Aldridge and all those guys. And you fast forward, and so 1912 was a big election year. So that's when you had Teddy Roosevelt run as a third party, the Bull Moose Party, to siphon off votes from Taft. Taft was a shoe-in for re-election, pretty much. I mean, he'd run the country kind of like a Cal Coolidge, just kind of stayed off of everybody's back and just let it just be. And I mean, Taft, all he ever wanted to be was a Supreme Court Chief Justice. So he didn't really want to be president. So he kind of ran it like a court. It was just really quiet. It wasn't a lot of bombastic stuff like you had TR, you had Teddy Roosevelt, who was a great stump speaker, but kind of a failure on a lot of constitutional levels and liberty levels. And of course, Teddy Roosevelt never really took us to war. I mean, he on a periphery way kind of did, but he would also fight in them. So he's not as bad as the chicken hawks of today.
Right.
But he still did love war. So I mean,
yeah, well, that's what I said about him. He at least he walked the walk. I mean, he was crazy. He was a warmonger, and he never met a war he didn't like. But he wanted to at least go fight it himself. So I do have a grudging respect for people that will actually go fight it themselves. I still think they're crazy, but if you're willing to risk yourself, okay. I can't really, that's why if the Lindsey Grahams of the world and people like that just in the unlikely event, maybe Lindsey would lead the all transgender brigade or something. But you see these people, Commander Lindsey Graham, it would be interesting to see. That would be just almost worth the price of admission. These guys try to be soldiers, but nothing works to these chicken hogs. Crazy, but Taft, Taft's son, of course, Senator Robert Taft.
Yes,
really, really good man.
Yes, absolutely good man. Yeah, it just makes you wonder, like the year 1912, a lot had going on then, and that having the Titanic conspiracy really not that far fetched. When all that was riding on the Federal Reserve, I mean, for them, they needed that piece. If you really look at history and you kind of reverse engineer it, they needed that last piece to have a central bank in the U.S. so they could get World War I, because they got World War I 8 months later. They got the Federal Reserve on Christmas Eve, 1913. They rammed it through when people had gone home and got a signature of the president. And then what was it? They had the guns of August in 1914. So looks like we got another call, Don. We'll see if we can take this.
Call for extension 0 to accept. Press 1.
We got that thing.
we got the message again. Sorry about that. You have to call back.
I'll call back. It seems to work in the second time. Oh, that's great. I'm glad to see people are calling. So nice to have the interest out there that we have. And we're supposed to, Tony, hopefully I can get a whole, we're supposed to have Sean Stone on next Friday.
Excellent.
So that'd be cool.
That'd be a great
Oliver
show.
Sunset. Yeah, very cool. And, Sean and I go back a ways. He came to DC. It's probably been 3 or 4 years ago now. And we had lunch together, and I was on his show at RT back when they still had studios in Washington, DC. A couple times. So Sean's very, very, I think, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. The last time I talked to Sean, I think he was a cute guy. He suddenly loved Trump. I don't know if he still does, but he did. So it'd be interesting to see. We'll have to kind of try to look at that. And I don't know what Oliver thinks of that, but very interesting.
All right, you're on with Don Jeffries. Go ahead.
Hey, can you hear me?
You got it. Go ahead. You're on with Don.
All right. Hey, so just wanted to say thanks for all the information y'all push out, man. I listen to y'all like as much as y'all are on like every week, and it's I don't know. I just wanted to call in and say what's up. And yeah, Tony, I'm definitely gonna have to hit you up for some gold and silver soon, because I've been seeing you do that, and it's like I just been kind of starting my gold and silver, adventure. I mean, I'm only 22 right now, so I've been trying to stack for a little while. But
you're way ahead
I
of the
don't know.
game, brother. At 22, I wasn't buying any medals yet. I mean, I bought some gold at 23. But no, that's great. Yeah, anything I can do to help. And thanks for listening. Do you catch us on the podcast, or you catch Don live, or how do you find us?
Yeah, I'll be catching y'all live. So I'm usually at work at this time of the day. I mean, I am right now, but I'm on break. But yeah, if I miss it, I'll usually just watch it after. But I found y'all through. Well, okay, so like I used to listen to, I still do listen to David Knight and stuff, and that's how I found you, and then I found Don and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. It's been definitely a crazy rabbit hole these last couple of years,
Yes, it has. Yeah, it's been a crazy time, and yeah, I mean it's history happening, brother.
It is crazy, and it's like I really started waking up like when I was like 19, going into 20, so that was like 2020, and then COVID hit and all that, and I'm like, holy, I don't know. I started really realizing all the crazy stuff, but yeah, I don't know. I just kind of wanted to call in and say what's up, and I guess the question for Don would be, so I've been listening to the Hidden History. I'm almost done with the first one. I can't find the second one on Amazon. Is that like there? Is there another place I should look, or I don't know.
The second one is called
I guess that would be it.
Crimes and Cover-Ups in American Politics, 1776 to 19. It's got a red cover with a foreword by Ron Paul. You can find it if you look up Don Jeffries in Amazon. That will come up usually along with Hidden History. But I will tell you, I'm working on next week. DonaldJeffries.media should be published with everything in one spot for Don. So like all his books in one link, his Substack, the podcast channel, how to contact Don, all that good stuff. It's social media. We're going to get it all one spot. I'm working on it.
Great.
All right, cool. Yeah, because I've been just trying to like piece together certain websites, and I listen to them on Ocelli too, so that's kind of cool to find that.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
Yeah, no, I think that'll be helpful. But yeah, that's all I really wanted to say. So
thank you for calling and have a great weekend. We'll hear from you next week.
Yeah, no problem, man. All right, see you.
Take care. Hey, you got some very cool. Hey, Don.
Great. I'm 22 years old. That's fantastic, man. It's just wonderful. So you're the hope of the world. My thing I wrote about John Doe's are the hope of the world. Well, people as young as you are, that's fantastic, because you guys are the ones that are really going to get screwed over if we don't change things. We've constructed a horrible world, and you need to have a future. You need to have hope. And I'm glad you're awake, and thanks so much for reading my books and everything. I really appreciate it. Alistair's mom points out thank you. It's the Olympic was the twins ship of the Titanic.
Oh, okay.
Olympic. The whole theory out there that it was, I don't even understand it, but there's some conspiracy theories that interest me less than others. And John Jacob Astor thing, very interesting, obviously. And then you have people, again, the Miles Mathises of the world. And Miles Mathis is probably the foremost. You don't know Tony, milesmathis.com. He's an artist, and I'm guessing he's some kind of a trust fund baby or something. This is what he seems to do for a living. But he thinks everything is fake, and I mean everything. So he doesn't think the Manson killings happened. He doesn't think the Kennedy assassination happened. So I'm pretty sure he doesn't think the Titanic happened either. And of course, I'm interested in a lot of that stuff, but I wanted to have him on the show, and he is so full of himself. He said, "I don't give interviews."
But he doesn't question his own existence.
No, exactly. Oh, he questioned mine. He came to my attention early on because somebody told me he had written about me and Dave McGowan when Dave McGowan was still alive. I'm very honored that I mentioned in the same breath with him many times. People compared us. But they said McGowan and I were both ghosts. That's the term he used. Look online and you can't find anything about them being real people. It's like, you can find so many pictures of me and so many interviews of me. It's ridiculous. And he was trying to claim, like, I guess I'm a creation of the CIA or something. Yeah, okay, well.
For sure.
Yeah. People probably know more than they should know about me. I'm constantly giving out probably too much information.
I mean, with conspiracy, Don, what I've found is that, Jim Mars said that the mind works like a parachute. It's best when it's open. But also, if your mind's too open, your brain falls out. So you got to be careful.
Right.
Again, I don't claim to have any kind of authority on Insta, but there's some stuff that just leads to nihilism. Like nothing's real, everything's staged. And I'm like, okay, then why even research it? If nothing matters, then why talk about it?
Yeah, well, that's what I get. And again, I'm as extreme as possible because I consider all this stuff. I had the flat Earth guy on last week. I mean, I'm open to everything because I know we're being lied to constantly. But if you and it's the same thing with you, and I see it come up all the time. So and so's disinfo, Jeff Renz, Alex Jones, all these people. Okay, you think, and this is the alternative side. This is what you have there. Tony and me, people like us. So if you think and who are you? I don't understand. Who are you trusting then? I mean, and there's, like you say, there's no point in even talking about the issue. It's all co-opted, and we're all part of the same game, and we're in on it. Then what's the point? So yeah, you can't go that far because otherwise there's not even any point in discussing it because it's all just a controlled show, and which I think it is largely. But I can tell you, nobody's co-opted me. And I haven't been paid. If I've been paid off, they didn't do a good enough job of paying me off.
It's on an installment plan.
Yeah. Please pay me more than you're doing. I'm certainly not getting enough for these books.
They put your loyalty on layaway, Don.
Exactly. But that's interesting. We're talking about everything. Titanic, all kinds of stuff's coming up, and the comments are continuing.
Those are the best chats. Just stream of consciousness.
What's over in the Rockfin chat? Because I'm looking at the YouTube comments, and man, they're just
you've been active over on Rockfin as well, and you got a $10 tip.
Oh wow!
So cool. Go back through.
Yeah, who is that? So we can thank them.
Absolutely. Let me go. I'm going back through right now to find it. It was a while ago. We sure appreciate any help on Rockfin. If you're giving donations, it just goes direct to the show. And we've all agreed between myself and Don and Billy, just everything goes back into the show, whether that's websites or microphones or software or whatever. It's all reinvested. We appreciate you. And then this helps us get, the better our setup is, the better guests we get. That was Faded Reality, $10.
Oh, Faded Reality. I think that's becoming a regular thing with Faded Reality. Thank you so much, man. You're tipping us every week like that. Very, very cool. Very much appreciate the support. And that's whether it's money or not, we all have to, and Donald Jeffries Media is Tony's kind enough to set up the website for me. Right now, you can still go there and it's my Substack, but anything you can do to support the alternative media. So if you want to support people like us, you can go to Substack and you can take the pay option. It's like $5 a month. No, it was $5 what is it? $55 a month or $50 a year or something. I forget. And some people, it's there for free anyhow. I'm a populist, so I didn't feel right about having pay content versus you're going to get the same thing, but you want to help us, that's fine. So anything you can do, and you're supporting us by listening and with your interest and your comments, because if shows like this can grow, then we can become an alternative, a real alternative to what's out there. Because right now you're not getting. Tucker Carlson is about the best you're going to get on TV. And he's going to be limited in what he can do. But nobody else, if you want to hear people talking, so when you see these crazy things happening, monkeypox or things like that, you want people that are going to approach it the right way. You're not going to people that are going to take it because there's no reason to take it seriously. Especially when it's on so much other fear porn and things that have been thrown out in the last 2 years. I mean, can't we have a break, maybe a peace and quiet for a month or something like that? I mean, go back and look at American history. Tony talked about William Howard Taft. Another example would be Calvin Coolidge during the 20s. The golden age, the roaring 20s. Well, he didn't do much of anything, and that's why he was a great president. He didn't do anything. He couldn't screw anything up. He was such a man of few words. Tony, that's a great, anecdotal story where supposedly a woman bet him because, hey, Mr. Coolidge, President Coolidge, somebody bet me $100 that I couldn't get you to say 3 words. You lose.
I was just thinking about that this morning.
And it's great, but I was talking about Taft, Robert Taft, fantastic guy, Mr. Republican, Mr. Conservative, and I don't know, I think he died of cancer or something, but I don't know. He died right after he was running for president, and he should have been the 1952 Republican nominee. He was a favorite. Eisenhower snuck in, the war hero, and people like Earl Warren, then the governor of California, young Richard Nixon, these kind of rhinos of an earlier decade, earlier time period. They all backed Eisenhower, the establishment, and Taft had some bitter statement about it's impossible to become the Republican nominee without the support of Chase National Bank or something like that. And then he went away. But Taft was a real profile in courage, literally. And I pointed out in Crimes and Cover-Ups, one of the chapters in John F. Kennedy's book, Profiles in Courage, which put him on the map, was about Senator Robert Taft opposing the Nuremberg trials. And I was the first person, I think, since that time period to oppose the Nuremberg trials. Now everybody says, but the alt people on our side, they want another Nuremberg trials. If we ever, it's not justice. It was a corruption of justice. It violates all the historical precepts of war for the winners to put the losers on trial in a courtroom. It's ridiculous. I mean, you could argue all war is illegal or is against the law. It's outside the boundaries of that. Obviously, you're running around and you're legally killing people, right? That's what you're doing. Murder is illegal, except during war. It's expected, right? So I think we really crossed some moral boundaries there, and Taft had some great comments on it, and so did JFK himself. And people need to look at that and see the kind of people that recognize Eisenhower's brothers. Both were against it at the time too. John Eisenhower, I forget the other guy. But that's history, and most people don't remember it. I'm just trying to keep up with these comments. We don't get a break from the time. Yeah, it's you guys are just.
We fantastic. Got another $2 over in Rockfin. Let me see. And of course, Faded Reality was our caller, Don, the 22-year-old that donated $10.
Oh man, I wish I had known that. I hope you're still listening. Did he say his name? His real name, but that's Faded Reality. Bless you, man. You're not only donating money every week. You're 22 years old. You're a profile in courage. Anybody your age, with your generation that cares enough about the world, it's a wonder you don't have your nose buried in your cell phone like most of your peers do. And fantastic, that's incredible. And I can't tell you how much.
$2 tip from Bex, from BEX over on Rockfin. Thank you.
Thank you, Bex. Appreciate that so much. Yeah, it's wonderful to see this kind of and I know this out there because there's a lot, and the problem is trying to some of the platforms that I appear, quite frankly, Frank of Quite Frankly, I'm on there. That's Susan Olsen's favorite. She loves that guy. Loves the Brady Bunch. She's been on there, and she asked me to try to get her on the show, and I said, "You're on the Brady Bunch. You asked me to try to get you on the show." But she's a big listener. She was listening when I was on the other day. But he's got a really nice audience. And so we need to have this crossover thing so that people that listen to Quite Frankly know about the Rockfin shows. And Jeff Rentz's audience, really, really big audience. That's a big platform for me. So that Jeff Rentz knows about the David Knight audience and the Jeff Rentz audience. If all of these audiences got together and they watched, because presumably all you guys that like people that watch Fox News, they watch their entire lineup. How, but they did, somehow they do. And certainly it's more palatable, I guess, than CNN or something. Or if people that drive around and listen to a particular radio station, they listen to that whole radio station's lineup, terrestrial radio. Start doing that with alternative media. Know when my shows are on and Tony's are on, or when we're on guest platforms, David Knight, Jeff Rentz, people like that, Quite Frankly, that are coming at you, because there's not that many of us left. You have some podcasts as well too, SGT Report and Sarah Westall, and people that are Patrick's Midnight Rider News. But these are they're all out there. Tim Kelly, who does a really good job. Our Interesting Times. I've been on his show several times. And I know I'm forgetting somebody, and I apologize. Even Coast to Coast. Now you have regular listeners to Coast, millions of, but a lot of us, that's the biggest platform we can get. So just listen and support that way, and that's the way to do it.
Well, Don, you got about a minute. Do you want to wind down? Just tell people where they can find you and make sure you you plug your new website, DonaldJeffries.media, folks. Is going to be looking good next week about this time.
Absolutely. And again, thank you. Thanks to everybody for all the calls and the questions in the chat room and for listening in. We'll try to give you a great show. Hopefully next week we'll have Sean Stone on here. And again, you can find me at DonaldJeffries.media. Right now, that's where my Substack is. And I write there a couple times a week. And that's my primary writing platform. It's all my blog, but I'm probably mostly to and as Tony mentioned, the next week, DonaldJeffries.media will be a place where you can find all things about me. You can find links to my books and so forth. And my latest books on Borrowed Fame. You can search for me out there. And Donald Jeffries Show, the other show that I have is every Wednesday on Ocelli.com. Jeff Rents every Monday at 9 o'clock. Lots of places to find me. And I know most of you are finding it out there. Thanks to Tony Artem. Thanks for everybody again. Thanks to Charles Key. Thanks everybody for listening in to I Protest.